Outcome A5 is contract law. The difficulty level is actually pretty easy. For any sort of law student who has their basics sorted on contracts, this should be a pretty easy section or outcome to go through. Tips on this one is revise all your basic principles of contracts and vitiating elements, all of that, the basics of contracts which you learned and probably still remember because it has become muscle memory by now. Those things are very important, and also do the case laws. The case laws in this one are really important because most of the questions they actually take from the precedents, so that's very important. And also the case studies at the end of the reading material, I found them pretty interesting as well. Outcome A6, torts. Again, like contracts, this one is actually pretty easy for any law student with like all the basics in place. The tips on this one was the different tests were important, like for negligence, for different rules like Rylance versus Fletcher. Case laws were very important. Also learn the defenses for each of the tort. Just learn the defenses and what qualifies it as a tort and the defenses for the same. So that actually was very important for this one. Outcome A7, criminal law. Again, easy one. It's actually not as easy as contracts and torts, but then again, similar to contracts and torts, you have to have all the basics in place, like actus reus, mens rea, and all the works of the chain of causation and what causes it to break, etc., etc. The tips on this one are learn the defenses and learn the case laws. The different cases behind burden of proof, various principles behind criminal law would actually be very, very important. And also learn the elements behind each offense, which is very important. You can't really memorize the statutes, but then the elements of each crime will be very important, because you'll be asked to pick like which crime is it. For example, is it a theft or a dacoity, or is it a dacoity, or is it a robbery, or is it an armed robbery or a dacoity? So you have to be very clear about which category of offense it is, so you need to understand the elements behind each crime. The chapters go in detail about homicide and offense against property, so that part you kind of have to concentrate a bit on. Okay, outcome A8, property law. It was a little hard for me. Hard because there's incredible detail on the formalities of conveyancing, land registration, mortgages, leases, etc. This will take you a little bit of time. It took me a while. So there is a lot of different classes of interest that are registrable under UK law, and there is a lot of detail on this one. So the tips are, I made notes. I made tons of notes on this one, and then I marked everything up so that I came back before exam to revise this. Registrable interests are like one of the biggest portions on this one. Leases a little easy. Registrable interests and mortgages are very important in property law. It's actually a little bit dry with the principles of conveyancing and all that, but then you just need to mark the important bits up and then just come and revise before exam. Outcome A9, equity and trust. This is actually an easy outcome. The most important portions of this one are the kinds of trusts and their characteristics. Basically, what makes them each trust. For example, what is a constructive trust, what is a resulting trust, and what makes a resulting trust. Why is it not a constructive trust? So that is actually very important, the characteristics of each trust and what makes them so. Trustee duties and liabilities are very important. What can a trustee do? What can't he do or she do? The fiduciary duties, etc. are very important. It's actually a read-through sort of a section with I had very few markers for this one to revise. The revision notes provided by QLTS school in this one is actually quite enough. Outcome A10, human rights. I have actually given it like a medium. For me, it was a bit dry and there was a lot to read. It's a lot about the HRA and easy HR. It's actually an important module. I felt that it was actually covered a lot in the exam. It's mostly about the processes and jurisdictions for human rights cases. It's a little dry. You have to remember the rights and freedoms, though that's the tip, and you have to kind of remember all the available jurisdictions. Revision exercises in the study materials are not quite reflective of the actual test questions, but the practice tests, when we actually reach the the mock tests and the practice tests, will help. But then the test questions in the study material itself, behind each chapter, that's actually not much helpful on this outcome. Outcome A11, business law. It was actually a very low difficulty level on this one. It's a very important outcome though, because it's an easy scorer. You can almost get everything right on this outcome if you just give it some attention. Types of corporate entities, advantages and disadvantages of choosing each one, and what happens at corporate insolvency procedures, if it's a partnership between two partners and then the corpus is 50,000, and how is the liability split in case of insolvency, all that kind of questions you can expect in this one. It's very practical, the questions and the outcome study material as well. So tips are just remember all the duties of directors, legal personality, the piercing the veil. How does each corporate structure act in case of like an insolvency procedure or profit splitting, etc. So all those kind of very practical points really help here. So you should really do all the reference questions and all the practice questions and revise this before the exam, because it's a really easy scorer. If you've done this one, it's a really easy scorer. There are no complicated questions here. So I'd advise you revise this one thoroughly before exam so that you don't make any careless mistakes on this one.